"Maggie, why don't you go ahead and take a seat?" My boss didn't look at me when he said it. He stood at the front of the glass conference room. Titan Biotech's entire executive team dialed in on the screen behind him. I was still holding the presentation clicker in my right hand. I had built every single slide in that deck myself, spent hours perfecting the data visualizations and crafting the narrative to address their specific concerns and questions. "I'll be assuming direct oversight of the Titan account moving forward," he continued smoothly, like he was discussing something as mundane as lunch plans or parking arrangements or weekend weather forecasts. My stomach dropped. The room temperature seemed to plummet instantly. The air felt suddenly thin and difficult to breathe properly. Titan's COO blinked on the screen, clearly confused by what he was hearing. "I'm sorry, what did you just say?" My boss smiled that practiced smile of his, the one he used with difficult clients. "We're restructuring internally. Strategic realignment to better serve your needs moving forward." Then he turned to me and slid a white envelope across the polished mahogany table. The sound it made sliding toward me was the loudest thing I'd ever heard in my life. Time seemed to slow down completely in that moment. "HR will walk you out." The room went dead silent. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. I could hear the air conditioning humming overhead and the clock ticking on the wall behind me. 2 years of my life. $12 million in revenue. My client. My relationship. My trust carefully built over months of dedicated work. And he fired me in front of them all. That was the moment my career was supposed to end. That was the moment I was supposed to disappear quietly into corporate history, forgotten and replaced within weeks. What he didn't know. The contract still had my name on it. My name is Maggie Hayes, 35 years old. Senior Account Director at Preston Analytics, at least until that Thursday morning in late September. I built my career from absolutely nothing but work ethic and a stubborn refusal to be overlooked or underestimated by anyone in this industry. Titan Biotech wasn't just another win on my record. It wasn't just another logo on our client list or another line on my resume to impress future employers. It was my proof. Proof that I belonged in those rooms with executives twice my age and 3 times my salary. Proof that I could deliver results that nobody else in our firm could match or replicate. I found them when they were bleeding money on failed marketing campaigns and struggling to communicate their value proposition to investors and stakeholders. I flew out to their headquarters in Boston alone when my boss, Blake Morrison, said it wasn't worth the travel budget or the time investment for such a small prospect. I stayed up 3 nights straight rewriting their financial projections before their critical board review, because he claimed he didn't have time to help me prepare adequately. When the deal finally closed after 6 months of persistent effort and countless revisions, Blake shook hands with their executives in the lobby. He took the credit in our company newsletter that went out to all employees. He got the bonus structure adjusted to benefit himself directly and substantially. But Titan's leadership trusted me personally. They had my personal cell number saved in their phones. They texted me on weekends with questions about strategy and implementation. They knew exactly who actually did the work and who showed up when it mattered most. And Blake knew it too. That's exactly why he had to humiliate me publicly. That's why the firing had to be so dramatic and so visible to everyone. HR walked me past my own team, past the cubicles I walked through every morning for 6 years of my professional life, past the conference room where I'd celebrated wins and worked through challenges with colleagues I considered friends, past the kitchen where I'd shared coffee with people who now avoided my eyes, past everything I'd built and every relationship I'd carefully developed over time. Nobody spoke to me. Nobody made eye contact with me as I passed. I saw confusion written clearly on some faces, fear on others who understood they could be next in line. One person, Amanda from the finance department, looked genuinely guilty, like she'd known this was coming and hadn't warned me in advance. Blake didn't come out of his office. He stayed behind his closed door with the blinds drawn tight against the hallway. He didn't need to watch the aftermath of what he'd done to me. The message was already crystal clear to everyone in the building who mattered. She's replaceable. Anyone is replaceable. Nobody is safe here anymore. I held my head high. I kept my shoulders back. I didn't let my face show anything except professional composure and dignity. But when I finally reached my car in the underground parking garage, my hands started shaking so badly, I couldn't unlock my phone to call anyone for support. I sat there for 20 minutes, gripping the steering wheel with white knuckles, trying to breathe normally and process what had just happened to my career. I wasn't just fired. I'd been erased. Deleted from a project I built from the ground up with my own ideas. Removed like I'd never mattered at all. Like 2 years of dedication meant absolutely nothing to anyone. That night, I sat at my kitchen table and opened the Titan contract on my laptop. All 83 pages of dense legal language and technical specifications. I didn't cry. I didn't call friends to vent or complain about injustice. I didn't pour wine and feel sorry for myself. I didn't do any of the things Blake probably expected me to do. I read. Carefully. Slowly. Every single word. Every clause. Every provision. Every footnote and addendum. Page 47. Section 14.2. Executive Continuity Provision. The agreement specifically designated a primary strategic lead for the duration of the contract term. That position was listed by name, not by title or role, by actual legal name. Maggie Hayes. Any transfer of that designation required written approval from Titan's board of directors. Not just their CEO, not their CEO alone, the full board of directors in a formal meeting. And not through internal company reassignment or verbal notification. Through formal documented authorization with physical signatures on official letterhead. Board-level approval. In writing. No exceptions or shortcuts allowed under any circumstances. My breathing slowed gradually. My hands stopped shaking. I read that section 4 more times to make absolutely certain I understood exactly what I was seeing in black and white legal language. Blake had fired me before securing that approval. Which meant legally, operationally, contractually, he didn't actually control the Titan account at all. And Titan didn't answer to him, or to Preston Analytics. They answered to the contract, which still had my name on it in clear, legally binding language that couldn't be ignored. 3 days passed in strange, unsettling silence. I didn't call anyone at Preston Analytics. I didn't send angry emails or leave accusatory voicemails demanding explanations. I waited patiently. I wanted to see what would happen when Titan realized what Blake had done without their knowledge or consent. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer because I was exhausted from thinking and worrying about my future. Maggie. It was Titan's COO Vincent Howard. His voice was tight, controlled, professional but tense with barely contained frustration. We just received formal notice that you're no longer assigned to our account. That information can't possibly be correct. I chose my words very carefully. Each one mattered now more than ever. I was informed by Preston Analytics that my position was eliminated. Effective immediately. A long pause on the other end. I could hear him breathing, hear papers rustling in the background. Did our board approve that change? No. The silence that followed felt heavy. Weighted. Important and charged with meaning and implications. That's a significant problem, Vincent finally said. His voice harder now. A very significant problem that we need to address immediately with Preston's leadership. And just like that, in that single moment I wasn't powerless anymore. The script had flipped completely. Blake had made his move without reading the fine print carefully. And now the consequences were beginning to unfold in real time. The next morning, Blake sent Titan a formal email requesting transfer approval for the account. I heard about it from a former colleague who still talked to me secretly. Professional language. Corporate tone. Like it was a simple formality that everyone would rubber stamp without question or hesitation. Their response came back within 2 hours. Fast for a major corporation with bureaucratic processes and legal departments. Per Section 14.2 of our agreement, any change to designated strategic leadership requires full board discussion and formal authorization. We'll schedule a review for next month's quarterly meeting. Next month. 4 weeks away. 4 weeks of uncertainty and instability for Blake. Blake hadn't read the fine print. Or maybe he had read it, and he'd simply assumed they wouldn't enforce it strictly. He'd thought his position and his charm would be enough to smooth everything over quickly and efficiently without complications. Either way, the arrogance was showing now. The cracks were starting to form in his carefully constructed plan. And for the first time since that awful conference room meeting, he was the one scrambling. He was the one caught off guard and unprepared for resistance. And I could picture the panic spreading across his face when he read that email response from Titan's legal team. My phone rang again 2 days later. Blake's number flashing on my screen insistently. I stared at it for 3 full rings before answering, trying to prepare myself mentally for whatever manipulation he'd attempt. Maggie. His voice was warm. Too warm. Fake and calculated. The artificial friendliness made my skin crawl with discomfort. I think we may have acted somewhat prematurely on the transition. May have. Somewhat. The careful language of someone trying to avoid admitting a direct mistake or taking responsibility. I'd like to discuss your possible reinstatement, he continued smoothly. There's an opportunity for you to return in a revised capacity that could work for everyone involved. He laid out the terms carefully and deliberately. Lower base salary than before. Significantly reduced bonus structure. And he would personally oversee all Titan communications moving forward. Every email. Every call. Every meeting. I'd be support staff. Background. Invisible and powerless. He didn't want me back. He wanted control. He wanted my knowledge and my relationship with Titan, but he wanted my name stripped off everything official. I'll need to review the offer carefully, I said calmly, keeping my voice neutral and professional despite my anger. Then I declined. Politely. Professionally. Firmly and without hesitation or second thoughts. His silence told me everything. He'd expected desperation and gratitude. He'd gotten clarity and confidence instead. 2 weeks after my firing, an email arrived from Titan. Not to Preston Analytics' general inbox. Not to Blake's personal email address. Directly to my personal email address that only clients had access to. They were holding their quarterly strategy session in 3 weeks. Would I be available to attend as an independent advisory consultant? They'd compensate me directly for my time and expertise. I read that email 5 times. My heart pounded in my chest. This wasn't a courtesy invitation. This wasn't them being polite or sympathetic to my situation. This was a statement. They were choosing me over the company. Over Blake. Over everything Preston represented. I accepted immediately without overthinking it or seeking advice. When I walked into Titan's headquarters on the day of the meeting, I wasn't wearing Preston Analytics logo on my badge. I wasn't carrying their branded folders or business cards. I wasn't representing Blake's team or his authority. For the first time in my professional life, I was representing only myself and my own capabilities. And when Titan's executives greeted me in their lobby, they didn't look uncomfortable or awkward about the situation. They looked genuinely relieved. Like they'd been worried I wouldn't come. Like they needed me there specifically. That feeling was indescribable. Validating in a way I'd never experienced in my entire career. During the strategy session, Titan's CFO asked a direct question that everyone had been thinking about. Maggie, if you're no longer with Preston, what happens to our financial projections? Who understands our models now? The room went quiet. Everyone waited for my response. This was the moment that mattered most to my future. I answered confidently without hesitation. I walked them through the models I'd built from scratch over months of research. I explained the assumptions, the variables, the risk factors, the sensitivity analyses in detail. I did it without notes because I'd created every single piece of it myself. It was all stored in my head. When I finished, the board chair, an older woman named Helen Cross, leaned back in her chair thoughtfully. You've always been our point of clarity, Maggie. Not the firm. Not the brand name. You personally. Not the company. Not the corporate reputation. Not Blake and his team. Me. That single sentence changed everything inside me. It validated 2 years of hard work. It confirmed that relationships matter more than corporate letterhead. It proved that competence can't be transferred with a job title or an organizational chart. I felt something shift inside me fundamentally. Not revenge. Not anger. Just certainty. I knew exactly what I was worth now. Titan delayed their contract renewal with Preston Analytics. They cited leadership uncertainty in their official communication to Blake and the executive team. The renewal had been scheduled for the following month. $12 million in projected annual revenue hanging in the balance. Gone. Just like that. With one strategic decision from their board. Preston's quarterly revenue forecast dropped overnight dramatically. The numbers didn't lie to investors or analysts. Leadership noticed immediately. Questions started circulating through the executive floor like wildfire. How did this happen? Why didn't anyone see this coming? Who approved the firing without checking the contract terms first? And suddenly, my termination wasn't the clean, strategic move Blake had presented it as to the executive team confidently. It wasn't a simple restructuring. It wasn't an efficiency play. It was a costly mistake. An expensive miscalculation that was now threatening quarterly targets and investor confidence. People started asking uncomfortable questions in meetings. And Blake started having very uncomfortable closed-door sessions with people much higher up the organizational chain than him. A legal notice arrived at my apartment via certified mail requiring a signature. Non-compete agreement enforcement. Legal intimidation dressed up as official paperwork with threatening language. Blake was trying to prevent me from working with Titan independently. I forwarded it to my attorney, Nathan Brooks, immediately. He read it once, then actually laughed out loud on the phone with me. "They terminated you without cause," he said, still smiling in his voice. "They disrupted the client relationship unilaterally. Their legal leverage here is extremely thin. This is a bluff. A weak one that won't hold up." Blake had rushed the firing impulsively. He'd acted on emotion and ego instead of logic and legal protection. He'd assumed I'd disappear quietly like so many people do when terminated without warning. He'd assumed I wouldn't fight back or challenge anything formally. And now that assumption was exposing him completely. Because every aggressive move he made now just highlighted his original mistake. Every legal threat just proved he hadn't thought this through properly at all. Preston's corporate leadership requested internal documentation. They wanted to understand exactly what had happened with Titan. They wanted to see the complete decision-making process that led to my termination and the subsequent fallout with the client. Emails surfaced during that review, including one Blake had sent to his direct supervisor 3 months earlier when the deal closed. "We won't need Maggie once Titan signs the renewal. I can handle the relationship myself moving forward." Forwarded. Time-stamped. Documented. Confident and arrogant in its assumptions. He'd planned this carefully. He'd been waiting for what he thought was the right moment to take credit for my work and remove me from the equation entirely. He thought I'd disappear quietly. He thought Titan would accept the transition without question or resistance. He'd been spectacularly wrong on every single count. Titan's legal team sent me a formal offer through my attorney. Independent consulting agreement. 18 months initial term with renewal options. Significantly higher hourly rate than my Preston salary had been. Plus equity bonus tied to specific performance metrics we developed together collaboratively. Multi-year relationship potential. My name on the contract as the primary consultant. No middle layer taking credit. No Blake speaking for me or taking credit for my ideas and presentations. When Preston's leadership learned about the offer through industry channels, panic set in visibly. They called an emergency executive meeting on a Friday afternoon. They asked Blake directly why the client relationship had deteriorated so rapidly and completely. He blamed market misalignment. He blamed shifting corporate priorities at Titan. He blamed communication challenges. He blamed everything except his own actions and terrible decisions. But the timeline didn't support his story at all. The documents didn't support his story. And Titan's statements certainly didn't support his story or his excuses. He was isolated, exposed, and running out of explanations that sounded remotely credible to leadership. Blake stopped being invited to certain strategic meetings with senior leadership. His executive assistant, who used to smile at everyone in the hallways, stopped making eye contact with people. The CEO stopped publicly defending him in company communications and town halls. He started looking tired. Worn down. The confidence had drained from his face visibly over weeks of pressure. Power leaves quickly when performance drops sharply. And Titan represented a $12 million hole in Preston's quarterly projections that couldn't be hidden. That kind of loss doesn't stay quiet. It doesn't get forgiven easily by boards. It creates pressure from investors and board members. It demands answers and accountability. Blake was suddenly the person who needed to explain himself repeatedly in uncomfortable meetings with angry executives. And he didn't have good answers anymore that satisfied anyone in leadership. During a company-wide town hall meeting, someone from the product team asked about the Titan situation directly. The question came from the back of the room. Everyone went completely silent, waiting for the response they knew would be awkward. Blake stumbled over his response, visibly sweating. We're currently reevaluating our strategic direction with that account. It's a complex situation with multiple factors involved. Translation: we lost it. We messed up badly. We don't have a solution or a plan to fix it or recover. People noticed the stumbling. They noticed the vague corporate language that said nothing concrete. They noticed the visible discomfort and the sweat on his forehead. Confidence cracks publicly, and once it starts, it spreads fast through an organization like wildfire. After that meeting, I heard from 3 former colleagues who reached out privately. They all said essentially the same thing with sympathy. We didn't know the real story until now. We thought you'd left voluntarily for another opportunity somewhere better. I signed Titan's consulting agreement after Nathan reviewed every clause carefully for any hidden issues. I created my own LLC with his legal help. Hey, strategic advisory. Simple. Clean. Professional. No middle layer taking a percentage of my earnings. No company structure diluting my value or my contributions. No man speaking for me or summarizing my work in meetings to executives. Just my name on the contract. My signature. My direct responsibility and reputation on the line. Felt terrifying, honestly. Starting over at 35 years old. Building something from absolute nothing with no safety net. Risking stability for independence and uncertainty. But it also felt powerful in a way I'd never experienced before in my life. For the first time in my career, I wasn't asking permission from anyone. I wasn't waiting for approval from committees that didn't understand my work. I wasn't hoping someone would recognize my work eventually. I was betting on myself completely. And Titan was betting on me too. That mutual trust meant everything to me. Titan formally terminated their contract with Preston Analytics. The official letter cited significant leadership instability and breakdown of strategic trust and communication. That phrasing was surgical, precise, deliberate, and damaging to Preston's reputation. It wasn't just business language. It was documented criticism that would follow them. Blake wasn't just wrong. He wasn't just mistaken in his approach. He was officially, publicly identified as the problem in writing. Preston's stock price dipped slightly when the termination became public information in industry reports. Industry newsletters mentioned it in their weekly roundups and analysis pieces. Financial analysts asked pointed questions on earnings calls about the loss. The story spread through professional networks rapidly. And Blake's name was attached to all of it. His reputation was taking serious damage that would follow him. Losing Titan triggered a broader internal financial review at Preston by the board. Auditors started examining expense reports carefully for patterns. Pipeline projections. Revenue forecasts. Client valuations and profitability analyses. They found patterns. Expense padding on client dinners and travel expenses. Overstated client values and forecasts presented to leadership. Nothing criminal that could be prosecuted. Nothing prosecutable in court. But definitely dishonest. Definitely problematic for a company that valued integrity publicly. Blake had been inflating his performance metrics for years, apparently based on what auditors discovered. Small exaggerations that added up significantly over time when calculated. Projections that never quite materialized into actual revenue despite his confident presentations. Expenses that didn't match receipts when examined closely by auditors with access. His pattern emerged clearly once people started looking with scrutiny and skepticism. And boards hate patterns like this. They hate liability that could come back. They hate undisclosed risk that could affect the company's reputation or stock price. Blake emailed me directly. Personal email address, not company email. Subject line: Professional resolution. Maggie, I think we should resolve this situation professionally. There's no need for ongoing tension or conflict between us moving forward. Resolve what exactly? I hadn't sued anyone or filed complaints. I hadn't contacted the media or reporters seeking attention. I hadn't spread rumors through industry contacts maliciously. I'd simply taken the opportunity Titan offered me and built something new independently. Blake had undone himself through his own actions and poor decisions. His arrogance had created his own consequences. I hadn't attacked him publicly. I just stopped protecting him from himself and his mistakes. I didn't respond to his email at all. Sometimes silence is louder than anger. Sometimes the best response is no response at all. Let the silence speak volumes about my feelings. The internal memo came out on a Tuesday morning. Quiet. Understated. Easy to miss if you weren't paying attention to company communications carefully. Blake Morrison had been placed on administrative leave pending completion of the financial review by external auditors. No timeline specified for his return. No details provided to staff members about the investigation. No celebration from me. No satisfaction or vindication or victory lap. Just absence. Just the same empty space he created for me 3 months earlier in that conference room. People noticed the irony throughout the company. The same conference room where decisions were made without input. The same sudden disappearance from the building without warning. The same lack of explanation or transparency from leadership. Preston appointed an interim account director to handle remaining strategic clients who were growing nervous about stability. Younger woman named Alexis. Cautious. Clearly nervous about the situation she'd inherited unexpectedly without preparation. She immediately reached out to Titan professionally. Professional email with careful language. Apologetic tone throughout. Hoping to rebuild trust somehow and salvage the relationship if possible. Too late. Trust isn't transferable between people automatically like files. Relationships aren't reassignable through organizational charts or memos. Titan had chosen their path forward clearly. And it didn't include Preston anymore. The interim director tried for 2 weeks with persistence. Phone calls. Emails. Proposals for new terms and conditions. Then quietly stopped trying when nothing worked and she got no responses from anyone. Titan expanded our consulting agreement after the first successful month of working together independently. Instead of 18 months, they proposed 3 full years with automatic renewal options. Instead of $12 million annually, the projected value jumped to $17 million over the full contract term with bonuses. My firm. My signature on every document. My strategy and execution. My name at the top of every document and every proposal sent to their board. Nobody could slide an envelope toward me now. Nobody could erase me from something I built with dedication and expertise. I'd taken the foundation Blake tried to steal and turned it into something bigger than he'd ever imagined possible for himself. The industry newsletter headline appeared on a Friday morning in my inbox from multiple sources. Preston Analytics senior executive departs following significant revenue loss and internal review. That was it. No farewell party with cake. No goodbye speech to staff members. No company statement about his contributions over the years or his achievements. Just a box carried out early in the morning before most people arrived at the office to witness it. The same walk I'd taken 3 months earlier. Past the same cubicles where people worked. Through the same lobby with security watching everything. Out the same door to the parking garage where I'd sat crying. But this time, people watched quietly from their desks through the windows. This time, everyone knew exactly what had happened and why. And this time, there was no confusion about who'd made the critical mistakes that cost the company millions. 6 months after my firing, I walked back into that same glass conference room at Titan's headquarters for a major presentation to their expanded board. Different company name on my presentation folder now. Hey Strategic Advisory in professional lettering that I designed. But the same polished table. The same large windows overlooking the city skyline. Titan's executives stood to greet me when I entered the room for the meeting. Actually stood up from their chairs respectfully as a group. A sign of professional respect and partnership. Nobody had stood for me the day Blake fired me publicly in front of clients. Nobody had defended me in that moment when I needed support. Nobody had questioned the decision when it happened in real time. And that small detail, that simple gesture of respect now nearly broke me emotionally. I had to pause for a moment to compose myself. Had to breathe deeply to maintain control. Had to remind myself that I'd earned this through competence and perseverance, and refusing to give up on myself. Blake thought power meant position in an organization. Thought authority came from titles and corner offices and organizational charts with his name at the top. He rushed to take what I'd built because he believed stealing credit was easier than earning respect honestly through hard work and dedication. I learned that real power is credibility built over time through consistent performance. Real authority comes from relationships built on trust and competence delivered consistently over years, not months or weeks. He exposed himself by acting too quickly and impulsively without thinking. By being too arrogant and overconfident in his position. By assuming nobody would notice or care about the contractual details he'd overlooked completely. I didn't scream at him or make scenes. I didn't retaliate emotionally or seek revenge publicly. I didn't plot elaborate revenge schemes against him. I just read the contract carefully and thoroughly. I trusted my own value and abilities when nobody else did. I built something that didn't require his approval or his permission to succeed in the marketplace. Blake lost everything because of arrogance and impatience and poor judgment. I won because I stayed calm and let the truth work itself out naturally over time without forcing anything. Sometimes revenge isn't loud or dramatic or theatrical. Sometimes it isn't cinematic or entertaining or theatrical at all. Sometimes it's just stepping back and letting someone fall off the ladder they kicked you from selfishly. Sometimes it's just being better and more professional than they assumed you were capable of being. And sometimes the contract still has your name on it in black and white.